The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There may be spoilers. This episode is scripted by Newell Fisher and Leea Mäkelä and is narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 107, in which we will be looking at the fourth and last story from part 2 of Tales from Watership Down, chapter 11 of the overall book, El-ahrairah and the Lendri. Just one bit of barrow keeping this week, and that is to say that the podcast reached 20,000 plays this week, excluding YouTube plays. Thank you to all of you for helping this to happen. Anyway, let's meet Lendri. Part 2, Story 4, Chapter 11, El-ahrairah and the Lendri. I like badgers. A lot. Where we are living now, we put food out for them and love watching them bimble about on our trail camera, for that very much is what badgers do. But this chapter is written from a rabbit's point of view, so that is what we will go with for now. The opening quotation is from Beatrix Potter's The Tale of Mr. Todd, and it is not very complimentary about the character Tommy Brock. Here in Britain, Brock is another word for badger. Mr. Todd is a fox, whose oven is used by Tommy Brock to hide the kidnapped children of Benjamin Bunny and his wife Flopsy. They manage to escape in the ensuing fight between Mr. Todd and Tommy Brock. The story was inspired by the Uncle Remus stories, apparently. Interestingly, the Todd is the name of the fox character in Richard Adams' earlier book Plague Dogs, written after the publication of Watership Down. In my experience, a fox would never fight a badger. They are far too scared of them. Watching the interaction between foxes and badgers is fascinating, as we are able to do nightly here. The only animal both are scared of at night? A cat. As soon as one of our cats shows up, all foxes and badgers disappear. Anyway, back to El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle. For, I think, the first time since story 1 of this section, The Comical Field, it is briefly made clear that Dandelion is telling this story. Rabscuttle can feel that they are now close to home, but El-ahrairah senses that they will have to overcome some kind of obstacle before they get there. They have been travelling through meadows of long grass, but now they see a thick forest in the distance. They can see no gaps or paths through it, and El-ahrairah decides to ask a large rat for help. The rat advises that old Brock might be able to help them, though he would be just as likely to eat them. The rat seems to be amused by this thought. Old Brock is to be found grubbing up and down the edge of the forest. It is nearly knee-frith or midday the following day when they reach the forest. They realise that the best time to meet old Brock will be at night, which is a frightening time for a rabbit whose natural feeding time above ground is at dawn or dusk. They have not been searching for very long when El-ahrairah suddenly feels a great paw hold him down. After a tense and hostile conversation, during which old Brock eventually releases El-ahrairah from under his paw, El-ahrairah tells him of their adventures, including why they had to journey to the Black Rabbit of Inlay and how this forest is their last obstacle before reaching home. In exchange for old Brock's help, El-ahrairah offers their services in any way he wishes. He growls at them to join him at his set, spelt S-E-T-T, the badger equivalent of a warren. Old Brock's set is huge, and they enter it via a hole on the edge of the forest. Eventually, after an exhausting journey along its tunnels, they come to old Brock's sleeping place. There, El-ahrairah offers to forage for him in exchange for being guided through the forest. He asks what old Brock eats. The answer, basically, is everything. Badgers, or Lendri in Lapine, are not carnivores as such. They will certainly make easy kills of vulnerable animals, but will eat almost anything they can find. A homba, or fox, is more carnivorous, but, like their close cousin the dog, they can make do for a while on a non-meat diet. Only the pfeffer, or cat, the only truly native examples of which in Britain are the increasingly rare wildcats of the Scottish Highlands, are true obligate carnivores, having a gut that is too short to survive on anything other than meat. If a dog were to eat nothing but cat food, it would gain weight unhealthily. If a cat were to eat nothing but dog food, it would slowly starve. El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle begin a period of their lives unlike any a rabbit had undertaken before, or will again probably, until Keehar needs feeding on Watership Down, collecting worms, slugs, snails and eggs for old Brock. But they also have to force themselves to catch mice and other small and helpless creatures for their new master, and gain a terrible reputation up and down the hedgerows. For the sight of rabbits behaving in this way disgusts the local wildlife, who mock them for what they are doing. They grow short-tempered with each other, and the Lendri becomes no more friendly as time passes. One morning, Rabscuttle says they should ask old Brock how much longer they will have to work for him. His answer is to keep working until he feels like letting them go. One night, a hare tells them old Brock will never let them go or help them. He will just work them until they die or run away. El-ahrairah feels close to despair. A few nights later, they notice some freshly dug earth quite near the set. Thinking this might be good for finding worms, they start digging. And this is where the story takes a completely left-field turn. As El-ahrairah is digging, he can smell something buried that has died. Digging further, he finds a human hand, a woman's hand. The smell is sufficiently strong that it must mean the rest of the human is buried there. They both dig some more, enough to reveal that there is definitely a woman's body buried here. El-ahrairah wants other humans to find the body. He seems to have a plan in mind. 2 days later, a man with a gun finds the body, marks the place and hurries away. Not long later, a lot more humans turn up in a hrududu, marking the place with the body off with posts, with blue and white tape running between them. They are very busy and talking loudly. El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle have told the Lendri, who, seeing this scene, runs away into the tunnels of his set. After a while, he diverts into a little-used side tunnel they have not been down before. They desperately follow him. The run is seemingly like the Slack Run at Sandalford Warren, a long, deep, little-used run designed for escape. After a while, the Lendri emerges into the forest and hides. El-ahrairah, also emerging with Rabscuttle, realises they must get away before it comes back. El-ahrairah's ability to use the resources available to him now come to the fore. Finding a small clearing near the humans, he finds the tracks of the hrududu, and once the men are gone, they follow those tracks out of the forest. Rabscuttle is worried that they have simply made their way to another part of the side of the forest they arrived at, but from the position of the sun, El-ahrairah can tell that this is the other side. They rest for a night in a bramble bush, and the following day find their way back, at last, to their home warren, where, as we learn in Watership Down, all new problems begin. And so, the apparent murder of a human woman and the subsequent police investigation is what allows El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle to finally make it home. Is it canon? In this story, the maze theme of part 2 of Tales from Watership Down continues, only this time the hostile presence is needed as a guide through the maze and must be paid in labour first, unlike the heron in the Great Marsh. The activities of the humans in the forest and their mysterious nature to the rabbits also reminds me a bit of the trolls in The Hobbit. To a rabbit, the alien environment of a forest is probably seen as a human environment because of their uncanny ability to find their way out of it, and El-ahrairah's use of human activity to escape their predicament is a mark of his leadership. And his leadership is well overdue for being reasserted by that point, after the degradation both he and Rabscuttle have received at the hands of old Brock. Leea Mäkelä adds, with reference to the 1999 TV series of Watership Down, quote, "Also in the series there's Bark the Badger, living in the woods, or better an orchard, who just wants to be friends with rabbits, but due to poor social skills tries to befriend them in scary ways before they find some common ground. In Tales of Watership Down, the Lendri living in the woods doesn't seem to be just lonely, though, but seems to be perfectly skilled and determined to enslave rabbits to hunt for him and act in un-rabbit-like ways. The story of El-ahrairah and the Lendri uses a chance to use a crime story as a background for El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle to finally break free from the pact with the Lendri, though they basically just find a corpse and use the general hassle that follows when humans find it too to escape. Readers aren't enlightened who was murdered or who did it, but now I guess I'll have to keep a closer look on if there's rabbits in the background in Midsummer Murders or some other TV shows of the same nature." End quote. Indeed, the human murder really is very random as a device in this story, unsettlingly so, especially as it is almost brushed over. Or is that me as a human thinking that the death of a human should seem more important to rabbits? On reflection, The randomness of this event that reminds us that this story is still set in the same world as we are living in has an authenticity I rather like. El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle happen upon an aspect of the human world that will seem utterly bizarre to them. The woman is dead. She's out in the open. So that, for a rabbit, would be the end of it. Although, having said that, the body of poor Thraean Losa in chapter 40 of Watership Down does receive a little more attention from other rabbits than this suggests. As for El-ahrairah, Rabscuttle and the other rabbits of the Watership Down universe inhabiting the same world as we do, that is a subject that I will be returning to. Is it the same world, or a slightly parallel one? Overall then, despite its slandering of badgers, I think this story should be regarded as canon, for broadly the same reasons as the last two. Next time, having reached the end of part 2 of Tales from Watership Down, we pause for a one-off episode. Watch this space. That was a clue, by the way.